Welcome, everybody. So I'm going to start off with a story. This year was 1892, and the location was Stanford University, which is very close to where I am right now. There were two college kids, and one of them was an orphan, and he was out of money, and he didn't know how to fund his education. So these two guys come up with a plan, and they decide to put on a concert at their campus. And so they go around scouting for who could be a great talent to present on their campus. And they find this very famous pianist of the time, Paderewski. So Ignacy Paderewski was a top pianist. And so they go to approach him, and then he puts them into touch with his manager. And the manager comes up with this contract where they say that you have to give us $2,000 before the recital starts. Okay, so then these boys, take that as a cue and then go off fervently putting together a plan, market this event, sell tickets, and the day of the event has come. And on the day of the event, they haven't sold quite enough tickets. They have only $1,600. So the boys write the check and they take it to Paderewski and profusely apologize, go and drop a check for $1,600, and they drop a check for $400 saying that it will be made available for cashing in a month's time. Now, Paderewski hears their story and understands their situation, and then he looks at it and says, he tears to both the checks, and he says, no, take this back. And he says, go ahead and deduct all of the expenses that you all incurred in marketing this event, putting this whole thing together. Now go ahead and take out the expenses that you need for going to college. And if there's anything remaining, give that to me. These two boys are astonished with the generosity. And if you think about it, a lot of us, when we come across a moment like that, when we have the opportunity, when we are in a position to help, most people ask this question, if I help them, what will happen to me? But then there are the great minds who ask a different question. If I don't help them, what will happen to them? Anyway, so the concert is a massive success. The event's over. Many, many years pass. Paderewski goes on to become the Prime Minister of Poland. World War I breaks out. Poland is demolished. There is a great famine. 1.5 million people are going through starvation. So then Paderewski looks around and says, how can I salvage the situation? And he finds the US Department of Food and Relief Administration, which has a grant, has a budget for it. So he approaches them and he requests them to support his country. So there is a man named Herbert Hoover who is the head of the administration of this department. So he listens to this situation and arranges for food aid, sends grain, shipped across tons of food items, and a disaster is averted in Poland. Paderewski is moved. He is eternally grateful, and he decides to come and meet Herbert Hoover, who has been the source of that donation. So when he comes and tells them that he can't thank him enough, he's profusely grateful to him, Herbert Hoover says, oh, hold on, wait, you don't need to do all this to me. Do you remember that two kids that you supported in school? You paid for their tuition and helped them graduate? I'm one of them. And what you have done is basically, it's empowered me to be in a position that I'm grateful to be able to be of service back to you for that kindness that you showed a couple of decades ago, perhaps. Now, story goes on that Herbert Hoover goes on to become the 31st president of the United States. Now, the message here is nature is designed to give of itself. Rivers don't drink their own water. Trees don't eat their own fruit. The sun doesn't give heat to itself. And flowers don't spread fragrance for their own enjoyment. Living for others is one of the rules of this universe. And therein lies the secret of living. With that, my friends, I hopefully have framed the context for this conversation. We're here upon your request to talk about this very intriguing subject of karma. Now, the word karma is often associated with some sort of a concept of retribution. It's considered to be that thing that came from the East, mostly associated with India. And they say, I believe in karma, or I don't believe in karma. Now, it doesn't matter whether you believe in karma or not. Now, the word karma, literally in Sanskrit, it translates to action. So what we're here to talk about for the remainder of 50 minutes or so that we have ahead of us is the laws that govern action. So we're all here in this field of action. This planet Earth is our playground. So we all have put on these costumes called our bodies, and we're all playing our parts in relationships, interactions, and with nature, with people, with each other, with ourselves, etc. So there are certain laws, just like the laws of motion that Newton has written. There are some laws that govern the course of actions. Okay. So now, while there's a lot of things that you probably know about this, I'm going to talk about some of the intriguing, some of the subtle aspects, which I think is of interest. The first of which I want to talk about is the first very fundamental thing, which many of you must have heard of. It aligns with the third law of motion of Newton, which is the law of cause and effect. So every action has got an equal and opposite reaction. Now, this is not just a thing from the East. You must have heard it from the West and everywhere else. We've heard about this phrase of what goes around, comes around. As you shall sow, so shall you reap. So that's the most easy way to start off this thing, by understanding the fundamental law of cause and effect. Okay? The second law states that this is not an eye for an eye kind of a law. So what does that mean? So if I do something to you, it doesn't mean that retribution or the equal response to that will be coming from you in the same exact way that I have done something to you. Okay, so you must have heard of this famous Gandhi statement, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. So that's my, so the laws of the universe, especially related to karma, are much more intricate and much more subtle than being just like a bouncing back of a ball. Okay. Now, that brings me to the third aspect, that the law of karma becomes very interesting because you know about this. We talked about this idea of causality. So you have an action, you've got a response. Now, things that can be measured in the time frame of this lifetime. So I talked about this idea that if we are beings of energy that have come onto this world to play our parts on this earth, putting on this costume on this stage called the planet Earth, what that also means is that the continuum of time in which we have to look at these laws of cause and effect extend beyond the confines of this particular act. In this particular act, by which I mean this particular physical lifetime of this physical body, which is very finite. Okay. So the laws of karma carry with the energy that we are. So you could call it the soul. And therefore, it's not necessarily that everything that we do, we shall see the response or the reaction to that in this lifetime. Okay. And therefore, it becomes a little more mysterious. Now, there's a very interesting book. When I first embarked on the spiritual journey when I was in college about 20 years ago, I came upon this thing called The Journey of Souls. I encourage you to read this if you're interested in this subject. It is on the topic of hypnotic regression. So there's a doctor called Dr. Michael Newton who's written this book, and his field of expertise is in taking people into a hypnotic trance and almost like flipping back pages in their memory bank. So you know how all of us can remember vividly for the last 24 hours, a little bit less as we're going further back into time. And then, talk about 20, 30, 40 years ago, we don't remember anything else. We don't really remember the details, or we don't hardly remember anything. So imagine if you're talking about causality that transcends or it extends beyond this lifetime, then how do you find the root causes of something that you are suffering? In this particular case, he's a psychologist dealing with trauma that could have its sources beyond this lifetime. So what he does is he takes his people into hypnotic trance and he regresses them. So goes back in time, sometimes back dating even beyond this lifetime, maybe sometimes multiple lifetimes, to see what is it that they have, that has happened, that is the root cause of that particular symptom that they're experiencing, which modern medicine and our different techniques of being able to probe into the root cause analysis in this lifetime do not work. Okay, so highly recommended. It's called The Journey of Souls. So, okay, so these are all the different things that talk about how karma works. And so karma fundamentally is action, as I mentioned, and action can be broadly categorized into three categories. So what are the three categories? Positive karma. So this is anything that you do good, you help people, you share it with people, you be kind, you say good things, etc. Then there's something called neutral karma. Neutral karma are mundane activities. So it's karma's action. So we are doing action, but they don't necessarily have a positive, negative effect. For example, I brush my teeth, I have a shower, I do things, kind of taking care, right? So those things don't have a positive, negative context to them. So then comes the third thing, negative karma, right? So these are things that I beat somebody, cheat somebody, I hurt somebody, I insult somebody, I'm condescending, etc., etc. Now, I want you to understand how karma is actually internalized. Okay, so that's the action that you do, but actions are only physical. But we talked about this whole idea of this thing being sort of a metaphysical subject because we're talking about energy, the being that we are, that actually feels it, that actually internalizes. So how does it internalize? So anything that you do at the level of the physical action gets translated into an experience. So you say something and somebody internalizes that as a positive or a negative comment, compliment, etc., right? It's an action, right? So at the level of the soul experiences that action, let's say in this context of the third category, which is the negative karma, as a loss of peace. Think about it. Anything that I do externally, which is a negative action, at the level of the soul, one is internalizing it as suffering or loss of peace. Therefore, if you think about it, the way that we settle that, we are able to rebalance that energy, is by somehow contributing to that loss of peace. So that means we add some peace into the system. So we talked about the system. Think about the system as being this closed system of this physical world, this world of action. This is called also in Sanskrit is karma kshetra. Okay, so the field of actions. Imagine this entire universe, everything that you see with the physical eyes, anything that can be measured, anything that can be quantified is in that field of action. And anything that happens within the field of action is like a closed system. So now by me causing certain bad karma, so my actions has resulted at the level of the soul as loss of peace. So now let's talk about how does one settle this negative karma, this third bucket. Now it's very important to understand at the get-go that doing more positive karma is great, but that's in a bucket, that's a silo by itself that does not contribute towards the negative karma one is accumulating. How do I know that? Well, you know that too. So I'll give you a very simple example. A rich sheikh from the Middle East sends his only son to the United States to go to one of the top universities. And on his graduation day, gifts him with a Ferrari, being proud of his accomplishments. The kid goes out and parties with his friends, drives a Ferrari into a tree and maims himself, or let's say dies. So think about what's happening here. So you have all of the positive karma that has brought about the situation of extreme opportunity and wealth, etc. But then you have something that is causing when somebody's maimed, for example, there is something that one is paying for. Okay, so this can show us, each one of us, we all have these multiple buckets within each of us and we're dealing with. So positive karma is like money in the bank. It's like an inheritance, whatever you want to call it, some resource that I can then expend that resource to buy a good life, to buy good health, to buy good financial success, to buy good relationships, wisdom, education, etc., etc. Okay, so that's how positive account is accumulated by the positive actions, and it gets used up by as we choose to cash in for a quality of life. Now, neutral doesn't really matter, so let's talk about the negative karma. So this is the really tricky one, and I'm assuming that this is the one that you guys are most interested in, and that's why you requested this topic. So let's talk about, so we all know how we build up the negative karma. Let's talk about how do we reduce it. And before I talk about reducing it, let us understand about what happens if I don't do anything about it and I have this bank of negative karma. How do I know that? What's the measure for it? Simple measure. There's a sense of heaviness. There's something like I feel I'm carrying a burden on my shoulder. I try to attempt, I go to the best, I work with the best plans, I go to the best business school, I put everything that is a proven process into action to run my business, run my family, run whatever. And it simply doesn't work. There's a weight that is holding me down. I have everything physically, but I'm not able to be happy. Right? I'm not able to be light. So that being light is a beautiful way to determine the balance of your buckets. The more I'm heavy, the more I feel obstacles coming in my path, the more I feel I'm struggling. There's a weight, and I'm seemingly doing everything right. So now let's talk about how do we alleviate this negative karma. So there's basically fundamentally three ways in which you go about it, okay? So the first one is the most ignorant path. And the path of ignorance says, you shall pay for the negative karma through the own suffering in your life, right? So loss of health, loss of relationships, loss of business, loss of, opportunities to enlighten oneself, etc., right? So we pay through that. So now all of the religions have written a lot of things about suffering, and I don't need to expand on that. You guys will probably do a much better job of talking about that than I will. The second category is awakening and awareness. So being aware that I am a spiritual being on this physical journey. And in the process of it, I bump against things. And as I bump against things, I build a scar tissue on my being. And think about, what does a scar tissue do? It blocks the free flow of energy. And so in order for me to remove the scar tissue of those actions that have caused the blockage of the free flow of energy, I need to turn to a doctor, a surgeon, a specialist. So I tune into the love and the light of the Supreme Being with vulnerability. I allow the light to penetrate through that crack or through that hurt, through that wound. So I need to expose that. And I let the light and the love of the Supreme Surgeon heal me. I let that light do its process until there is nothing left but light. Returning to that state of freedom I was talking about earlier, that sense of liberation, the lightness of being. Okay. Now, as I become aware, then the third thing is, as I become aware, I understand the accurate nature of everything that is happening around me is happening. There's a rhyme and a reason for it. It's very important. From understanding comes freedom from suffering. Now, this is the exact opposite of victimhood. Why is this happening to me? Why do I have to deal with this? Why only me? Right? So the moment there is that ignorance and says the feeling of being victimized by whatever is happening, the repercussions of whatever you're facing, in that ignorance, there is suffering. In the realization, same circumstances, but when I realize that everything happening to me is actually happening for me, there is a sense of freedom. There's no more suffering. Okay. Now, I mentioned about the definition of karma as action. So it's very easy for us to all get caught up in the physical manifestation of our doings. Now, yes, the physical manifestation of doings has a ripple effect, cause and effect, Newton's third law. But I want to talk about for a few minutes about something much more subtle and much more profound in our whole karmic exchange. Now, this is to do with the subtle aspect of the seed of who we are. If we are indeed energy, the fundamental action or the creation of energy at its most granular stage is thoughts. Just like actions has ripple effects, my thought create a ripple effect. Positive thoughts enlighten, illuminate, create a peaceful, pure energy for others who walk into that space to feel elevated. And negative thoughts have the opposite, creates this level of sense of darkness, a sense of scarcity, a sense of fear, mistrust, greed. You see? So there is a virtuous cycle as I am creating positive thoughts. Just like, for example, have you all had this experience when you walk into a place of worship that is not aligned with your faith? So this is an experiment that, as you all know, I love traveling. I've been to 61 countries. And one of the things that I make it a point as I'm traveling, one of the objectives of my travel is my curiosity to experience the essence of spirituality. Not religion, spirituality. So when I walk into a synagogue, a cathedral, a mosque, etc., etc., do I feel a sense of peace invade me, envelop me as I go in there? If so, there's something right about what is being practiced there. So you might ask yourself then, where does that come from? It comes from the last person who sat there and meditated. It comes from the last person who sent out a good wish for the world, who prayed, who put out a blessing. And that energy reverberates between the walls. And as I walk in there, I naturally pick it up. We all pick it up. Animals pick it up actually much more than humans can because they don't have the chattering mind, which gets in the way where, you've seen these people that, when you see a lot of tourists, they're rushing from one site to the next, not really sitting down and taking it in. These places are meant for a place to sit and contemplate. And if you give yourself the time, you'll begin to feel that. Okay. So that is the power of positive thoughts. Now, let me give you an example of the power of negative thoughts. I don't know if you ever had the opportunity to go to a institution for where people are incarcerated. So I had the opportunity to go to San Quentin and a few other prisons where I've taught over the years. And I'll tell you this one particular incident where I was invited for doing a series of course of 7 days at this women's prison in downtown San Francisco. Now, I had already been meditating for, I don't know, maybe 14 years at that point. I had been a teacher for quite a while, full time into it. But never have I been inside a building where I go in there and I teach meditation, I come out completely drained, exhausted. And I came back and asked myself, what is this thing? Why do I feel so gutted? And I went there to contribute, positivity and peace and give them some upliftment. And it's not just the actions, but what has had a profound effect in those visits was the ambient energy that my body, my soul was receiving from there. Now, if you think about it, none of those people who I'm talking to want to be in there. None of the staff who are working to keep those people in there want to be there. And none of the people who are supporting any of those structures really want to do anything with those people who are in there. So there's no love, there's no compassion. So that energy that is put out through those thoughts of those hundreds of people who are situated there and the people who come and have gone, guess what? That space is the container that's holding that energy. And when somebody walks in with the best of intentions, with the greatest of halos, will feel they're being dissipated. So this is what I want you to understand, that at the seed of our existence is us, the energy, and the fundamental creation of energy, even before actions, is your thought. Thoughts translate into feelings. Feelings translate into attitude. Attitude translates into action, behavior, personality, and personality determines your destiny. A lot of times people ask me this question, is my destiny fixed? Is everything fatalistic? I say no. You are creating your destiny, and if you want to change destiny, trace that string back what I just shared. It starts with your thought. Your thoughts define who you are and who you will become. So think about it. So karma is not just about action. It is also about thinking. Thinking, speaking, and then doing. So I want to talk about something that is it's a loaded subject, because a lot of times people ask this question, so what happens? I mean, when we look at somebody suffering, do we just let them be? Do we, show compassion? Are we judging them? What's my response? And I say that that's a very good thing to examine for oneself. First of all, when you're saying somebody is going through bad karma, going through suffering, you are judgmental. Stop for a moment and ask yourself, that situation that seems to be their bottom, their nadir, could perhaps be the greatest gift for that person to turn around. They needed to get to that point to be able to turn something around in their life. And that could be one of the most amazing gifts. It could be one of the most amazing contributions to shape the future of who they are, to shape the future about what is to come in their life. So be very careful before you judge, and ask yourself, what are some of those bottom moments where you feel that you hit rock bottom? How have they been a gift to you? So perhaps it is an opportunity for somebody to grow into something much more beautiful when they're going through this. And when you feel that somebody is suffering, instead of watching them and again looking at them with the kind of a droopy face and just concerned about them, ask yourself this question: what can my contribution be to help, to support them in this moment of their suffering? So use your sorrow, or use that your judgment, if you have judged, as a means for you to proactively step up to them and say, how can I alleviate them of their suffering? And you see, then the third thing I want to say about this thing about somebody going through suffering is suffering is a great, great heart opener. They say that suffering is a way to crack that hard shell that we built around our hearts, the shell of ego. And through that crack, we allow light, we allow love to flow in, as I mentioned a little while ago. So perhaps that experience that is happening, that you're witnessing, or you have witnessed for yourself, or you experience for yourself, it has made you more capable of empathy and compassion for others who are going through it. So I always say this, that if you're going through something, watch it, observe it, learn from it, and then let that be a teaching, a lesson. You are an expert now, and share that with others. Because there's millions of people going through this. We're all really in the boat together. We're all going through the similar things. Sooner or later, we'll hit against these life situations. And can my experience be a source of alleviation, of suffering for somebody else? Can I help somebody else navigate through those dark alleys of their mind, of their life, as they're trying to figure out this? They feel they're completely stymied, they're completely blocked. So be very careful before you judge somebody and saying they're going through negative karma. Okay. So with that, I'd like to take you into a reflection exercise where I mentioned to you about the seed, the fundamental creation of us beings, which is the creation of thought. And I'm going to walk you through an exercise where we can cultivate the power of positive thought, not only to reduce our own burden, but also lighten the burden of those around us. So before we do that, I want you to give me a big, nice shoulder roll. So go ahead and lift your shoulders as high as possible and then drop them, breathing nice and deep as you're going up. And as you roll your shoulders back and down, breathing out, emptying your lungs completely. If you want to go ahead and start closing your eyes as we're preparing to drop into the body, and then before that and after that into the heart space, go ahead and do that. Just give me some nice big shoulder rolls with deep, comfortable breaths. Now I ask you to reverse the direction of the shoulder rolls. So if you're going from front to back like I was, go ahead and go from back to front. Again, breathing in nice and deep, breathing out completely, emptying out your lungs. Okay, now dropping in from the body into our heart space. Continuing the breathing nice and deep. I'm not going to give you cues on that. I expect that to continue at all times of this instruction. I want you to tune into the being that you are. The being of energy that sits behind this forehead, that listens to these sounds, these voices that I hear. The smells that I smell through these nostrils. The light that I can see through the eyelids, even if my eyes are closed, through these eyes. The sensation of taste that I can feel on my tongue. And this experience of touch that I experience through the vast surface of skin. Whether it's skin on skin, whether it's clothes on skin, or your furniture that you're leaning against. Acknowledge the sense of touch. And the fact that you're experiencing the sense of touch right here behind the eyes. It's from here, seated in the control center of the body, that I, the living being, the life force that animates this body, operate. My language is silence. My religion is peace. My form is luminous energy. And my home is a realm far beyond this land of action and reaction, beyond the coolness of the moon, the warmth of the sun, and all of this dark matter of space. There is my home, the realm of light. Vast, unending space of golden red luminosity. This is a world of complete silence. Realm of absolute peace. And deep stillness. In this realm of light, I'm suspended like a tiny diamond, completely free, completely safe. Without any stress to be, do, or become like someone. I have to do nothing besides just being myself. In this realm of light, I notice one brilliant star that shines ever so brightly. And as I pay attention, I notice the emanation of loving energy from this being. And as I pay attention even further, I can feel the love embrace me. like a child in the embrace of a long lost mother. Having returned home. I open myself up completely, completely vulnerable, completely exposed, allowing this light from the source to penetrate any dark nooks and crannies that I have hidden away within my soul. Any dark spaces where I've held any fears, hurt, resentment. I let the light completely wash me, cleansing me, until all there is left is lightness. From this embrace of the Supreme Mother, from this absolutely comfortable space, let us now share this light and this love with our fellow travelers, playing their parts down on the planet Earth, my stage. So just like the moon reflects the rays of the sun, let me be the mirror that reflects the light of the Supreme Mother onto the stage. Lighting up the lives of my brothers and sister souls, giving them hope, giving them strength, giving them a sense of peace. Now, let us extend this sharing of this light of compassion to not just human souls, but all species and all elements on this beautiful planet Earth. Lighting up and illuminating the lives of everything, living or non. Imagine this light to be like a white light embrace around the entire planet, giving it a warm, cuddly hug, saying, I care. I care for everyone and everything in this place that I call home. Gradually bringing my awareness back to the seat in the forehead. Let us return to this physical space in this body. And I want you to notice for yourself how the energy in your immediate surrounding has changed in the last 50 minutes or so that we've been together. And if you have one word to describe that feeling of how you are right now, what would that be? And I invite you to share that with me in the chat window. So go ahead and share what you're feeling. I'm already getting lots of great comments. Great, fantastic. And also, I invite you to go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A section of the Zoom session here. If you all are watching through YouTube Live, unfortunately, there's not a way for me to monitor that. But if you're joining me through Zoom, please take advantage of that. So I'm hearing comments like I'm feeling grateful, I'm feeling peaceful, wonderful, excellent. So I have some questions here. The first one says, can you please explain this a little bit more? What knowledge brings freedom and how? Okay. The knowledge of the responsibility that I take for what is happening around me. So what is happening to me is a manifestation of something that I put out there. So that's the whole context of what we're talking about. So when I realize that everything here is happening has a rhyme and a reason, has a place, and it has a value in what it is here to teach me, to bring to me, even though I may like it or not like it. that's when I take myself out of the state, what I explained before, victimhood, which is a state of helplessness, where there's a wonder of, why is this happening to me? Why only me, right? Why not somebody else, right? So in that realization of taking responsibility for the situation, circumstances that you are, I know that this question came up even last time. There was a big commentary that happened between a friend who's now also, I see her, she's joined here, is this thing about I am creating my future. As I said in this whole section around your thoughts create your destiny. So your destiny that is happening, that's playing out, that's manifesting to you right now, all around you, is somehow I'm responsible for having manifested it. So that awareness, I hope I've answered your question. So then the next question is, what happens to us that causes us pain? Is there to teach us something? They are, or us to experience and overcome for our purification. Okay, so this is related to another question that I got. Somebody actually texted me and said they could not be here. They brought up a question, and I'll go ahead and ask that question as well. So what Melissa's asking here is that, so whatever is happening to me is causing me pain. Is it here to teach me something? Or is it here for me to experience something where I can overcome for the negativity I've accumulated and therefore go through this thing called purification? Okay. Now, the other question that I received related to this was as follows. The question was, how do I know when something is happening to me that is causing, it's a sort of a negative thing that I'm having to bear the burden of, whether that is something that is negative karma that is being created right now because of the interaction I'm having with this other person or thing, or is it the settlement of a previous thing? I think that's a very profound question as well. Okay, so let me go ahead and address both of these things together. The answer is very subtle. It's very subtle, but it's also, once you get it, it is a voila. It's like it's obvious. Okay, and here's how it works. When somebody is going through something that seemingly is a negative situation, they're going through a suffering. Now, there are two responses that one can have for that. One is that they're taking on that responsibility, they're playing that role in that situation. That is, from my perspective, looking at them, it's a negative situation, but they're doing it in their stride. They've taken it in their stride, they've accepted it, they're doing it, they're going through the motion, getting over with it. Versus they are kicking and screaming and they're being pulled by a leash as they're going through it. Same exact circumstances. I want you to imagine, take any picture, so take any example that you can possibly think of, and say how sometimes I can go through the motions of dealing with that circumstances, having reconciled, versus kicking and screaming. So when somebody is going through something where it's a sense of they have a feeling of that it's their duties, their responsibilities, whatever they're doing, to go through it and be done with it, that is when you know that it is karma being cleared. When there is kicking and screaming associated with that, as a response, it is the creation of new. So we talked about, remember, I mentioned that at the level of the soul, it experiences a loss of peace. So if I am going through something kicking and screaming, guess what? I am obviously increasing this sense of loss of peace, right? So that bucket which I talked about, that is obviously increasing, not reducing. Okay, great. So this is a very personal experience. My mom is going through major depression. She is negative about everyone and everything in life, including her own health. It is becoming tough for people to live with her. She refuses to do any meditation or listen to any spiritual sessions or see a therapist. It feels like a suffering, but like you said, maybe it is rock bottom according to you. How can we contribute to help? So the simple thing, as I said, is like when you go through a situation, and now obviously I don't live in your household, I don't know your mother as well as you do, ask yourself this question: what is it that I can do to contribute, to assist the soul going through this? Now, whether it is, whatever it is, whether it's new karma, bad, old karma, doesn't matter. Let's not judge that. Let us only ask ourselves, how can I support the soul in this journey? Okay, now it's very important that not letting that sap your energy. Very, very important, folks. When you come from a place of giving, whether it's Pedresky, Hoover story, so on and so forth, you come from a genuine place of giving, you don't feel like your energy is dissipated. You know, you feel actually more alive. You know, even after a tired day, when you go out to support somebody who's sincerely asking for help and you sincerely giving it from without any expectation, you realize when you come back from that, you have felt much more re-energized, rejuvenated. Okay, so make sure, first of all, you're protecting yourself from not being taken down the rat hole. But then the other thing is, how can I contribute to this person's alleviation of their circumstance right now? The least of which could be something as simple as what I shared earlier: positive thoughts, good wishes, blessings for that soul. It could be something so subtle as that, talking to the person, doing something for the person, and helping this person with circumstances, with, you know, getting professional help, what have you. It could be one of all of these things, and you will be the best judge for it. Okay. Then I have, okay, how do you relate karma to life-threatening diseases many people are going through, like cancer, Parkinson's, etc., including the current pandemic, and people dying of the virus? Okay, folks, I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to make any blanket statements. I'm not some sort of a saint who has come down to answer for the universe on this, but I will say one thing. We have a collective karma with everything on this planet. We have been collectively responsible, individually too, but we have a collective responsibility to bringing this earth into this condition that we see it now in. Now, I did a lot of talks on the pandemic itself, and I talked about the myriads of blessings that are hidden in this thing. It has taught us how to slow down. It's taught us about the value of building relationships, spending quality time with loved ones, actually mentoring people within our midst, and, you know, sharing the things and not expecting them to learn by virtue of our proximity. So, you know, we're actually giving quality time both for ourselves and for people around us. So there are many blessings. But now let us accept it that there is suffering. There are people right now who cannot breathe. There are people who are right now, who are doctors who are putting themselves on the line, who are suffering. The nurses, staff, there are social workers, there are these, what they call primary, these people who are holding up our society, our postal system, our road system, our sweeping the streets and grocery stores, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, more and more the world is opening up. There's more and more people becoming these frontline workers, right? This second, third line is becoming frontline because a lot of these people are now exposed to it. So yes, there's a suffering. And I just dealt with one person who reached out to me yesterday, and the guy's so sick that it's actually taking a mental toll on this person. He's become depressed. He's talking about life not being worth living. And he says if the pandemic goes on for 6 more months, he doesn't think it's worth living. You see, so it's you know, so there's a reality. So I appreciate your question. And my response to that is that we have an account to clear. We have something that we need to A, settle, put out some positive energy, but B, hopefully wake up. As one of my points in this, you know, in this whole process, how do we settle our karma, is we need to wake up to this and say we cannot continue plundering and treating Mother Nature as an endless resource that keeps giving, and we can take and keep abusing and just completely neglecting it. Where is the respect? Where is the balancing? You know, if you don't want to take away one thing from this whole talk which I did today, karma is rebalancing energies. And there's been friends of mine who have come up to me and said, listen, this is actually that Darwinian theory of the survival of the fittest. Maybe it is meant for people the population to go down. Maybe it is time for us to have that checks and balances that Mother Nature's kicked in right now. It's using its card and saying it's enough. You know, we're pushing something close to 8 billion people. Maybe it says that, you know, this is a load that is not sustainable. I don't know, but I'm just saying, what can I do? A, realize, awaken to it. B, change the way in which I interact. I engage with Mother Nature, and see, can I put out a positive energy like we did in this meditation just now that we did? Can I fill those void of those dark crevices, not just in my heart, but in the space that we call our home planet Earth? Okay, long-winded answer. Okay, I'm going to take this one last question from Katie. How is negative or positive karma related to free will? Is the part of Adamic sin true? Is negative karma inherent as part of a defect in how human beings define love? The love for individual self, immediate needs, versus the love for connected self as part of the whole, our effect on others, vice versa. So great, yeah. So it's a great question, Katie. So the way I would say is yes, realization. So I remember I go refer back to my 3-point formula. A, if you don't do anything, you're just going to suffer, right? There's going to be suffering. You're going to be not knowing why you're being dragged down here and put in the situation. B, you wake up to it and says, I am somehow responsible, and I go look for those lessons. And C, I let the light of this divine, I let that penetrate into my shell that I've built with my ego, and I say that I have to open it up for the doctor, for the universal energy to help me to heal. And I use that, first of all, to cure my dis-ease. And then I proliferate, I share that light of compassion, is the way I like to look at it, with all species on this planet. And thereby, to your question, I'm basically re-entering into my original space that at the essence, I'm nothing but love. With that, I'd like to thank you all. Great conversation, great questions. I know there may be some more that you've asked, but maybe I'll take it in the Q&A on the Facebook group or in the WhatsApp group. Go ahead and hit me up there. Until I see you all next week, be well, stay safe, and thank you.